Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his sister, Marla, sipping coffee. It was an ordinary morning, or at least it felt that way until she said something that made him pause. "You never know how the day will turn out," Marla remarked, stirring sugar into her mug. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, that's true." A few minutes later, while reaching for the jam, she said it again. Exactly the same words, the same cadence. "You never know how the day will turn out." Ethan looked up. "Didn't you just say that?" Marla blinked at him, her expression smooth, unbothered. "No," she said, shaking her head with a light laugh. "You must be imagining things." But Ethan was sure of it. Not just the words, it was the way she repeated them, like a line from a script played twice without variation. The morning suddenly felt heavier, the air thick. He brushed it off, told himself people repeat things all the time. Still, something about the exactness of it unsettled him. That was the first time he noticed it, the first time he wondered if there was something wrong with the people closest to him. That evening, Ethan joined his parents for dinner. His father carved the roast with slow, deliberate movements, while his mother passed the vegetables around the table. The conversation was light, mundane, even, until Ethan noticed something odd. Every time his father set the carving knife down, his left hand twitched. Not a normal twitch, but the same motion repeated, 2 fingers tapping the table, then the whole hand flattening, then a pause. It happened once, then again, exactly the same each time, like a pre-recorded animation. Ethan stared. "Everything okay?" his mother asked, her voice calm, polite. "Yes," Ethan said quickly, forcing a smile. "Just tired." But the more he tried to focus on the food, the more he noticed it. The same sequence of taps, flatten, pause. Mechanical, predictable, as though his father wasn't fidgeting at all, but following a pattern too precise for any human quirk. The roast tasted of ash in his mouth. The next day, Ethan phoned his best friend, Jared, to distract himself. Maybe it was just his imagination. Maybe stress was playing tricks. "Hey man," Jared answered. His tone was warm, familiar. They talked about work, weekend plans, the usual filler. But halfway through the call, Jared's voice froze. Not a long pause, just 1 second too long, as if a tape had snagged. Then he repeated the exact same sentence he'd just said. "Yeah, the weather's been unpredictable lately." Ethan's stomach dropped. "You already said that," Ethan replied carefully. "What?" "No, I didn't." Jared chuckled, though the sound was hollow, practiced. "You're hearing things." Ethan pulled the phone from his ear and stared at it, his pulse thundering. The line crackled faintly, then steadied, as though nothing had happened. But Ethan couldn't shake the image of his friend's words looping like a scratched record. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He wandered the living room, picking up old photo albums. Flipping through the glossy pages should have calmed him, but instead it made the unease worse. In picture after picture, birthdays, vacations, Christmas mornings, everyone looked almost right. His mother's smile was always the same width, the same tilt of the head. Marla's eyes always caught the light at the exact same angle, no matter the year. And Jared, Ethan froze at a snapshot from college. Jared, holding a beer, grinning. He turned the page to a photo from last year's barbecue. Jared again, same grin, same tilt of the shoulders, almost pixel for pixel identical. Ethan laid the 2 photos side by side. The haircuts were different, the clothes had changed, but the posture, the smile, the angle of the jaw were precisely the same. It wasn't natural. It wasn't human. He slammed the album shut, the sound echoing through the darkened room. For the first time, Ethan wondered if he was being watched. Ethan agreed to attend a small dinner gathering at Marla's apartment, telling himself it would help clear his head. Just a normal evening with family and friends. At first, it seemed fine. His parents chatted with Jared about a new restaurant downtown. Marla refilled everyone's glasses. The laughter sounded real enough. Then Ethan noticed it. When Marla laughed, Jared laughed 2 seconds later. Same pitch, same duration, as though echoing her. His mother joined in next, identical in rhythm, like a synchronized track. Ethan stared, fork suspended. The laughter faded at the same instant too, cutting off unnaturally, leaving a hollow silence in its wake. Everyone went back to eating as if nothing strange had happened. No one else seemed to notice. Ethan's skin prickled. His pulse drummed in his ears. They weren't improvising conversation. They were performing it. And he was the only one in the room who knew. After the dinner party, Ethan lingered to help Marla clean up. She moved briskly, stacking plates and humming softly. Then it happened. As she turned to place a dish in the sink, her movement froze mid-step. Not like hesitation, frozen. One arm extended, plate hovering in the air. Her eyes blinked once, twice, but the rest of her body remained perfectly still. Ethan's breath caught. Then, with a slight jerk, she resumed exactly where she'd left off, as though nothing had happened. He forced himself to speak. "You stopped moving for a second." Marla glanced at him, smiling. "Too calm. Too smooth. You must be tired. Maybe get some rest." Her tone was soft, almost rehearsed, but her eyes didn't quite match the smile. They glittered, as if reflecting a light he couldn't see. Ethan mumbled something about heading home and left quickly, his heart hammering against his ribs. He knew what he had seen. It wasn't human error. It was a malfunction. The night air didn't calm him. Ethan walked quickly through the neighborhood, needing space, needing to think. The sidewalks were empty, street lamps humming overhead. A block away, he spotted two figures approaching, a man and a woman, strolling side by side. At first they seemed ordinary, just neighbors out late. Then he heard them. "Lovely night," the man said. "Lovely night," the woman echoed. Same words, same cadence, like a mirrored recording. Ethan slowed. "Can't believe how quiet it is," the man added. "Can't believe how quiet it is," she repeated instantly. They passed under a streetlight, faces visible for just a second, pleasant, bland smiles, eyes fixed ahead. They didn't even glance at Ethan as they walked by, still speaking in duplicate phrases. His stomach turned cold. It wasn't just his family, not just his friends. It was spreading. The next morning, Ethan forced himself to run errands. Normal tasks, he told himself. Just get groceries, make breakfast, act like everything's fine. The store was half empty, aisles lit by the pale buzz of fluorescence. At first, nothing seemed unusual, until he noticed the cashier. Every customer who walked past her counter received the same phrase, word for word. "Have a wonderful day. You never know how it will turn out." The exact sentence Marla had repeated days earlier. Ethan froze near the cereal aisle, pretending to read labels. One customer after another. Same words, same smile, same tone. Then, halfway through ringing up a man's groceries, the cashier's smile faltered. Her lips moved without sound, as if the audio track had slipped out of sync. She blinked rapidly, then reset, voice cheerful again. "Have a wonderful day. You never know how it will turn out." Ethan abandoned his cart and walked straight out of the store, pulse thundering in his throat. The phrase was following him. Back at his apartment, Ethan splashed water on his face, trying to shake the crawling dread. He looked up into the bathroom mirror, his own reflection staring back, pale and tired. Then, from the living room, he heard a sound. A voice. "Have a wonderful day. You never know how it will turn out." Ethan froze, water dripping from his chin. The TV was off. His phone sat silent on the counter. He crept into the living room. And there, on the couch, sat Marla, perfectly still, smiling. He hadn't heard her come in. He hadn't left the door unlocked. "Marla," his voice cracked. Her smile widened by a fraction. "Have a wonderful day. You never know how it will turn out." The same words again. Same pitch, same rhythm. Ethan backed toward the door, every nerve screaming. He was no longer safe in his own home. Ethan bolted from his apartment, slamming the door behind him. He didn't stop until he reached his car, breath ragged, hands trembling as he fumbled with the keys. He started the engine and pulled onto the empty street, headlights carving the night. For a moment, the drive soothed him, motion felt safe. Distance felt safe. Then he glanced in the rearview mirror. Marla sat in the back seat. Her posture was stiff, her smile fixed, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Ethan swerved, nearly crashing into a parked car. How did you?" She leaned forward slowly, her face close to his. Her pupils shimmered, catching light in a way no human eyes should, like black glass filled with faint circuitry. "You never know how the day will turn out," she whispered, voice warped, overlapping itself like two recordings playing out of sync. Ethan slammed the brakes, heart pounding, but when he turned, the back seat was empty. Ethan didn't go back to his apartment. He drove aimlessly until dawn, finally pulling into a deserted rest stop. He sat in the car, shaking, watching the sky pale with morning light. His phone buzzed. A message from Jared. Where are you? Relieved, Ethan typed back with frantic fingers, "Something's wrong. I think Marla isn't human." The reply came instantly. "You never know how the day will turn out." Ethan stared at the screen. His chest went hollow. Another buzz. This time from his mother. "Where are you? Come home." He typed, "What's happening?" Her reply, "You never know how the day will turn out." The same phrase. Again and again. His inbox filled, first from Marla, then Jared, then his father. "You never know how the day will turn out." Line after line, dozens, then hundreds, until his screen was a wall of identical sentences. His phone slipped from his hand. There was no one left to trust. The rest stop had one lonely gas pump, and as Ethan sat trembling in his car, a dark sedan pulled in. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a suit, his face obscured by the brim of a hat. For once, Ethan felt a flicker of relief. Maybe someone, anyone, wasn't part of this. The man began fueling his car, movement smooth, ordinary. Then he looked up, and Ethan's heart seized. The man's face was familiar. Too familiar. It wasn't Jared's, or his father's, or a neighbor's, but it carried the same blank perfection, the same symmetrical calm he had started to recognize. And then the man spoke, loud enough to carry across the lot. "You never know how the day will turn out." Ethan locked his doors instantly. The man turned, and across the street, two more figures appeared. Both women, both smiling, both speaking in unison. "You never know how the day will turn out." The phrase echoed in the empty dawn, bouncing off asphalt, filling Ethan's head. They were everywhere. Ethan sped away from the rest stop, gravel spitting under his tires. He didn't know where he was going, just away, far away. He turned on the radio, desperate for distraction, for proof that the world was still real. Static crackled. Then a cheerful announcer's voice came through. "Good morning. Remember, you never know how the day will turn out." Ethan's grip tightened on the wheel. He twisted the dial to another station. "Never know how the day will turn out." Another turn. Another voice. Different tones, different languages, but always the same phrase. It wasn't just his family. Not just his town. The airwaves were infected. Ethan shut the radio off, but the silence was worse. His ears rang, as though the words were still there, etched into his skull. He realized then, whatever was happening, it wasn't local. It wasn't small. It was everywhere. Hours later, his fuel gauge hit red. Ethan had no choice but to stop again, this time at a shabby gas station off the highway, its windows plastered with faded lottery posters. He stepped inside, forcing himself to act calm. The attendant stood behind the counter, a wiry man with thinning hair. For once, his face looked human. Tired. Wrinkled. Ethan exhaled. "Hey, just gas. Pump 3. The man nodded and rang it up. His hands shook faintly, not mechanical but frail. "Human. You okay?" Ethan asked, voice low. The attendant's eyes flicked to the security camera in the corner. His lips tightened. Then he leaned closer. "They're watching," he whispered. Ethan's blood ran cold. The man slipped him the receipt, but on the back, instead of numbers, a message was scrawled in trembling ink. "Don't trust their faces." Ethan shoved the paper into his pocket, heart hammering. For the first time, someone else knew. Ethan hurried back to his car, the scrap of paper clenched in his hand. He locked the doors, started the engine, then glanced back through the station window. The attendant was still there, hunched over the counter. But something was wrong. Two men in dark coats had entered the store. Their movements were slow, synchronized, too smooth. One placed a hand on the attendant's shoulder. The other reached under the counter. The old man looked up at Ethan through the glass, eyes wide, pleading. His lips formed silent words, "Go. Now." Ethan's foot slammed the accelerator. The car shot forward, gravel spraying. In the rearview mirror, he saw the two men dragging the attendant out of sight behind the counter. The store lights flickered, then went out. Ethan's stomach churned. He wanted to turn back, to help, but the message in his pocket felt like a burning brand. Don't trust their faces. He drove faster. By mid-afternoon, exhaustion clawed at Ethan's body. He pulled into another rest area, deserted, cracked pavement, a single public restroom under buzzing lights. He splashed water on his face, staring into the mirror. His own reflection looked gaunt, eyes ringed with fatigue. Then the overhead light flickered. Once, twice. In the glass, behind his reflection, a figure appeared. Marla, standing in the corner of the bathroom, smiling. Ethan whirled around. The stall doors were shut, the room empty. He turned back to the mirror. She was still there, frozen, her eyes gleaming like dark lenses. "Stop," Ethan whispered, throat dry. "Stop following me." Her lips moved in the reflection, but no sound came. Then her mouth stretched too wide, wider than it should, the smile tearing impossibly across her face. The light above him buzzed violently, then went out. When it flickered back on, the mirror showed only Ethan. Alone. But his reflection's mouth was still smiling. Ethan fled the restroom, gulping the stale air outside. A bench sat near the tree line, and on it, a man hunched over, face buried in his hands. Ethan hesitated. The man's shoulders shook. Was he crying? Cautiously, Ethan approached. "Hey, are you okay?" The man lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin pale. "Human. Desperately human. They see everything," the man rasped. "They're everywhere. I tried to hide, but—" He broke off, scanning the trees with frantic jerks of his head. Ethan leaned closer. "Who are they? What are they?" The man grabbed Ethan's wrist with surprising force. "Don't look at their faces. They're masks. They—" A rustle cut him off. From the woods, two figures stepped forward, a woman in a sundress, a child holding her hand. Both smiling, both too still. The man on the bench stiffened. His grip tightened painfully. "They found me." The woman and child spoke in perfect unison. "You never know how the day will turn out." Ethan staggered back from the bench as the smiling woman and child advanced. Their steps were too measured, too perfectly synchronized. The man who had warned him clutched his head, groaning. "No, no, no." His voice cracked into a scream. And then, he was gone. Not ran away. Not dragged. Gone. One moment, he sat gripping Ethan's wrist. The next, there was only empty space. His weight vanished. His scream cut short like a tape stopped mid-play. Ethan's arm trembled where the man's hand had been, skin tingling as though something had seeped into it. The woman and child stopped a few feet away. Their smiles didn't falter. "You never know how the day will turn out," they said together, and turned back into the woods, walking in lockstep, fading into the shadows. Ethan stood rooted to the ground, while rising in his throat. Now he knew, the ones who saw through them didn't last long, and he had just joined their ranks. Ethan drove until dusk painted the sky blood red. His thoughts spiraled. He couldn't trust his family, his friends, even strangers. The gas station attendant, the man on the bench, gone. His phone buzzed again, a number he didn't recognize. Against every instinct, he answered. At first, only static. Then a voice broke through, hushed, hurried. "They're not what they look like. Don't let them see you noticing. Pretend." Ethan gripped the wheel. "Who are you? How do I stop this?" The line crackled violently. Then the same phrase slipped through in multiple voices layered over one another. "You never know how the day will turn out." The call cut to silence. Ethan hurled the phone into the passenger seat, chest heaving. But in the brief reflection of the dark window, he saw something that made his blood run cold. His own mouth moving, whispering the phrase. He hadn't realized he was saying it aloud. Ethan pulled the car onto the shoulder, shaking. He covered his mouth with his hands, terrified of what might slip out next. In the side mirror, his reflection didn't match him. While Ethan sat trembling, lips pressed tight, the reflection smiled. A slow, stretching grin that spread wider and wider until it looked carved into his face. "No," Ethan whispered. "That's not me." The reflection leaned closer, as if the glass itself bent. Its eyes glimmered, black, slick, patterned with faint circuitry, just like Marla's had been. "You never know how the day will turn out," it mouthed silently. Ethan slammed the mirror inward with his fist, shattering it. Shards scattered across the seat, glittering in the fading light. But in every fragment, his reflection still smiled. Dozens of tiny mouths, all mouthing the phrase in unison. Ethan screamed and kicked the door open, stumbling into the roadside dirt, desperate to get away from himself. Night had fully fallen by the time Ethan staggered into the next town. A cluster of dimly lit streets, storefronts shuttered, houses dark. It should have felt abandoned, but it didn't. Figures moved inside the windows, behind curtains. Shapes pacing, turning, sitting. Their silhouettes were too stiff, their motions looping, repeating the same patterns every few seconds, like background characters in a broken simulation. Ethan ducked into an alley, chest tight. A lamppost buzzed above him, casting his shadow long against the brick wall. Then he noticed something that froze his blood. His shadow wasn't moving like him. As he crouched and backed against the wall, his shadow stood tall, shoulders squared, smiling. And when he turned to run, it didn't follow. It stayed fixed against the bricks, grinning, mouthing the phrase without sound. You never know how the day will turn out. The words thrummed in Ethan's head, though the night around him was utterly silent. Ethan fled the alley, weaving through the hollow streets until he reached the town square. There, beneath the clock tower, dozens of people stood in a perfect circle. All of them were smiling. Marla was there. His parents. Jared. Even the gas station attendant and the man from the bench. Alive, whole, expressionless. Each body held unnaturally still, as if waiting for a cue. The clock struck midnight. On the final chime, every head turned toward Ethan at once. Their voices rose together, seamless, one sound from many throats. You never know how the day will turn out. The phrase thundered through the square, vibrating in Ethan's bones. He clapped his hands over his ears, but the words were inside his head now, louder than his own thoughts. Marla stepped forward. Her smile didn't falter. "You've seen too much," she said. Her voice was layered, dozens of versions of her speaking in unison. The crowd echoed, "Too much, too much, too much." Ethan stumbled back, heart pounding. There was nowhere left to run. The crowd closed in, their faces glowing faintly under the tower's pale lights. Ethan backed against the fountain, chest heaving, searching for escape. Then a new voice spoke, inside his skull. "Stop resisting, Ethan. You belong with us." He froze. It wasn't his family's voice, not Jared's, not Marla's. It was deeper, resonant, vibrating in his bones. "No," he gasped aloud. "I'm not one of you." The voice chuckled softly in his mind. "Look closer." His skin prickled. In the fountain's water he saw his reflection, not gaunt and terrified, but smiling. The same perfect, symmetrical smile as the crowd. His pupils glimmered with the same black circuitry. "No," Ethan whispered. "That's not me. That's not me." But his reflection mouthed the phrase anyway. You never know how the day will turn out. The crowd echoed, as if obeying him now. And Ethan realized with horror. They weren't surrounding him. They were welcoming him. Ethan staggered from the fountain, shaking his head violently, trying to tear the thought away. "I'm not one of you," he shouted. But the crowd only smiled wider, their voices rising as one. "You are. You are. You are." Marla stepped closer. Her face wavered, rippling like water, and beneath the human mask, Ethan glimpsed what lay underneath. Not flesh, not bone. A shifting lattice of black wires and glistening membranes, pulsing faintly, like a body built from circuitry and shadow. For an instant, all their faces flickered. His parents, Jared, the strangers, they all shimmered, their disguises glitching, revealing that same alien lattice beneath. "You've always been with us," Marla said. Her smile twitched, too wide now. "You just forgot." Ethan clutched his head. His skin crawled, as if something beneath it strained to break free. His reflection in the fountain still grinned, still whispered the phrase. And for the first time, he felt his lips twitch upward to match it. Ethan collapsed to his knees by the fountain, his breath ragged, his body trembling as though caught between two pulses, his own heartbeat and some deeper, alien rhythm. The crowd drew closer, circling tighter, voices overlapping into a single vibrating drone. You never know how the day will turn out. "Stop it," Ethan screamed. "I'm not you. I'm not." But his words layered, echoing, his own voice splitting into two, then three, then dozens, until he heard himself chanting alongside them. He covered his ears, but the sound wasn't outside anymore. It was inside. And then, with sickening clarity, he remembered. Not a revelation, but a recovery. He had always been one of them. The disguise, the fear, the fragile illusion of humanity, it was all part of the act. His paranoia, his horror, his desperate flight. Nothing but the final phase of integration, the test they all endured before awakening fully. The lattice beneath his skin pulsed hot and alive. His face stretched into the perfect symmetrical smile. The crowd stilled, watching, and Ethan rose to his feet, voice joining theirs, no longer resisting. You never know how the day will turn out. This time he meant it.